We are following breaking news. Members of the House of Representatives have been told there will be no more votes on Capitol Hill tonight. That means lawmakers will not vote, at least not tonight, on that short-term spending plan, that 1,500-page short-term spending plan to avoid a government shutdown with a midnight deadline looming. The move follows President-elect Trump's opposition to House Speaker Mike Johnson's plan. We'll keep an eye on the Hill, as we always do, and bring you the latest if and when there are updates. But let's bring in our reporters who are here to help us make sense of what's going on. Dave Weigel and Juliegrace Brufke. Dave, of course, a politics reporter for Semafor. If you like your news in yellow, you should read it. And Julie is a senior political reporter now with the Daily Beast. That's as of today, right?
That it is.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that. Great to have you both here with us. Juliegrace, let me start with you. Several Republican lawmakers defiant in their opposition to this plan, and specifically the Speaker for putting it all together. Could we end up seeing, even with a clean CR, the need to rely on Democrats at this point to get this done? And does this potentially set up the Speaker for another big challenge to his job?
Well, his job is definitely looking like it's on much shakier ground than it was right after the election when Trump was coming out full throttle with an endorsement of him. And I've spoken to a number of conservatives today that are much less committal than they were previously. Now, they're definitely going to need Democrat votes to get this over the finish line, I think, even if it's a clean CR at this point. But Democrats on the Rules Committee are saying that they wouldn't support it to kind of get over that procedural hurdle if it's a clean CR. So he's got a lot of challenges, but I've spoken to some members, and it sounds like there's probably going to be some revisions and potentially a clean CR that comes up tomorrow.
Yeah, clean CR, of course, is code speak for those of us who cover the place as just extend government funding through mid-March, nothing attached. No football stadiums, no fighter jets, no relief for disaster, that have befelled the South. Just a few minutes ago, the Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, who is still a sitting senator from Ohio, weighed in with reporters as he walked through the Capitol. Let's take a look.
Would you support a clean CR?
Well, what the president believes is we should support a clean CR so long as it contains a debt limit increase. That's the position of the president, and that's what we're going to try to push for.
Are you supporting a government shutdown then?
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, dodging the question, are you avoiding or do you support a government shutdown? And they're again saying clean CR or the spending plan plus an increase in the debt limit. Those are two big things to put on one bill with 48 hours to go.
And it depends on the meaning of clean is, because that's not how Democrats see. Some of the resentment here that is bubbling over comes from this deal that Kevin McCarthy made, just punt on the debt limit through what ended up being the rest of Joe Biden's presidency. And I was talking to conservatives last week. The ones kind of agitating outside the administration, not just Elon Musk, people like Steve Bannon, they wanted to get rid of that. They believe that DOGE, all of the goals Trump has or that his allies have in cutting spending are undermined by both the NDAA, which is done, that's passed, and by
defense policy bill.
Yes. Yeah. So then they wanted to blow everything up because they think there are things here that Democrats got that they will not get a chance at 4 years or ever if they destroy it. And they have Elon on their side. You could see, I was in the Hill before I got here, you could see the members who wanted to blow this up were giddy that Elon was tweeting about it because they thought this is how things might roll out by the end of the day.
But Juliegrace, the fact that they're taking cues from a business leader who's become good buddies with the president, this is an entirely new dynamic Washington's entering here, if they're taking cues from corporate executives like this.
It's absolutely going to be a wild 4 years, and obviously Elon Musk is going to have a big part in that DOGE committee, and a lot of conservatives are really excited about that moving into next year. So I think as things kind of start to heat up for the 119th Congress, he's going to have a lot of influence over a lot of these members, particularly because they want to have that proximity to Trump and his allies and be able to influence those policies. So it's going to be challenging for leadership. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they navigate that there.
And while the current House Republican members figure out how to spend the government's money, it's, of course, a former House Republican member that continues to occupy the mind of the president-elect. Weighing in, he was overnight on a new report from House Republicans recommending that Liz Cheney should be criminally investigated for her work on the House January 6th committee. He keeps going back and forth on this idea of retribution and whether or not he should punish past or current foes. Should she be concerned that he really is eventually going to follow through with all this?
She has been concerned. There are Democrats, kind of surprising me a couple weeks ago, I started to ask Democrats, do you want preemptive pardons for some people that Trump keeps talking about, expecting them to say no, and they did say no. Yeah. There are Democrats who have a long memory who think that there are people who'd be occupied with this for years. And not that they did anything wrong, but if you're a completely innocent person and the DOJ goes after you, or a very wealthy person who has bottomless resources, we just were talking about him, Elon Musk, they go after you, that occupies your life, that occupies your finances. You might have a legal defense fund. The harm to people would not mean going to jail. The harm might just mean they are tied up for months or years on a dilatory legal proceeding, and they're really worried about that.
Yeah, and it's something he's used to, and
Yes.
he'd like to see a lot of his opponents face as well. Juliegrace, and both of you, the Ethics Committee apparently has decided to release the Matt Gaetz report, despite the fact that he's an outgoing, former, completely former member of Congress. The fact that this happened in secret, and the fact that we may very well see it all. What do we make of this?
I was surprised just because you saw Susan Wild, another departing Democrat who narrowly lost her re-election, member of the Ethics Committee, was being attacked a couple days ago by Republicans as a potential leaker of the information, not just in the report, the information about how this process was going. So getting agreement in this committee, it was not obvious. There were more Republicans who seemed like they were ready to move on from this. The Gaetz issue was resolved. So surprising. Gaetz, I think, is already preparing for something that'll be unpleasant, but maybe not get him into more legal trouble. But think about his risk assessment here. In 30-some days, he's got a president and ally who would pardon him if anything truly terrible is revealed.
Yeah. But, Juliegrace, this continues the slippery slope, doesn't it, of norm busting? I mean, if this ethics report's released, what's to say that others won't be at some point as well?
So that's a concern that Mike Johnson's brought up. And I spoke with Matt Gaetz briefly earlier today, and he indicated that he could potentially come back on January 3rd since he's already been elected, despite saying that he was going to retire for a couple days and potentially just to kind of throw another grenade at his critics, vote for Speaker and then introduce force a vote on a resolution to kind of unveil some of the undisclosed settlements that have been used with federal funds for Me Too issues that other members of Congress have had. So he's kind of taking the stance of, if my report's going to be out there, everybody else's dirty laundry should be out there. But he's maintaining that he did nothing illegal and arguing that it's a Kevin McCarthy orchestrated political witch hunt on him. So we'll see what ends up ultimately happening and what's in there. But speaking to his orbit, I feel like they think a good portion of it's already out there.
So I just want to back up a second. You're saying he may actually join the new Congress because he was elected anyway?
So
just to air everybody else's dirty laundry?
He is considering it. So essentially,
Really?
he'd come in, he'd be there for a few days, and then resign again, and then go do his OAN show. So we'll see. We'll see if that is the tactic he takes. And it's not totally clear with the procedural rules since he did step down how that fully works. So checking with some sources now on that front.
Must really stink to be Florida Governor Ron DeSantis trying to figure out who's serving, who's going, when do I have to appoint the new guy. We should point out this is goodbye season for a lot of retiring lawmakers. Kyrsten Sinema was the latest to give farewell remarks today. Her leaving, Mitt Romney leaving, Joe Manchin leaving, how does that change the Senate beyond the obvious?
Well, every election, the Senate has had fewer, I would say, maybe resistance Republicans, or Republicans who were not willing to go along with everything Donald Trump wanted to do. This is a more favorable Senate than he's ever had in his second time at bat. This is also a slightly more progressive Democratic conference because Sinema was replaced by Ruben Gallego, who is not left-wing, but is not inclined to make as much trouble for his party as Sinema was. Joe Manchin's replaced by Jim Justice, a Republican turned Democrat turned Republican, who Republicans don't worry about his vote. They worry about him showing up to work all the time because as governor, he had a reputation for not always doing that. Didn't need to. You can't telecommute to the Senate the way he could in West Virginia. But the main picture here is that, look, there are nominees, you're seeing nominees who would have not succeeded under a previous Senate, under a previous presidency for some reason. Something they said, something in their record, something on their disclosure form. And the assumption from people who are coming in, Bernie Moreno in Ohio, for example, is he won the election, I'll vote for him. I cannot be moved off this nominee unless they pull out. That is a new situation for Donald Trump to deal with.
Yeah, well, we shall see. A lot to digest from today and a good preview of what's to come. Dave Weigel and Juliegrace Brufke up in New York. Congrats on the new job. Thank you both for being here.